Okay, you've got a big decision to make in round 2 or 3. You want to take a running back, but you're having trouble deciding who do I take? James Cook, Isiah Pacheco, Alvin Kamara. Actually, it's a whole list that we're going through in the consensus rankings, similar to what we did last week, but this is 9 through 17. And Jamie, Dave's here as well. But Jamie, last week you and I did that show with the wide receiver rankings. It was your rankings, not consensus. And it was 10 through 18, I believe. And it was Olave, London, Waddle, Pittman, Adams, Evans, Ayuk, Nico Collins, Debo Samuel. And I thought what was so unique about that group is really you could see them going in any order, right? Some people could be a big Ayuk fan. They could take him ahead of Chris Olave or whatever. I don't know if you feel that way about this group, but this is the group like after Barkley, Kyron Williams, and ETN. Probably a little bit more question marks here. And the consensus rankings are Rachaad White, James Cook, Isiah Pacheco, Josh Jacobs, Joe Mixon, Derrick Henry, Alvin Kamara, Devon Achane, Ken Walker. Do you think that group is completely interchangeable, or do you think there are tiers there?
I think they're somewhat interchangeable.
Somewhat interchangeable? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, like that group is, I think, pretty much locked in. Like you could make cases for potentially Montgomery, potentially Zamir White. If Jonathan Brooks is 100% healthy, maybe he jumps into this group. If something were, let's say, to happen to, the Cardinals don't love Trey Benson, James Conner creeps back into this range, something like that, but or vice versa, injury to one of those guys. So, but I think those are the running backs that you're talking about for sure, in this range, and where they go is probably just the biggest, determining factor. But like you said, it comes down to, I think, personal preference. Like, I'm getting a little bit more concerned about, Josh Jacobs, for example, by comparison to a couple of other guys in this group.
Dave, could you see how many of these guys could you see going late in the second round? So just give me a yes or no. Could you see these guys going in the second round? Rachaad White.
In PPR, yes.
James Cook.
No.
Oh, really? Okay. No. Pacheco.
Yeah, I think he could.
Jacobs.
Yeah. I disagree with Jamie. I mean, I'm curious to hear Jamie's thoughts on Jacobs and what he sees, and I'll give you my research on Jacobs. Who'd you say?
Mixon.
No, not round 2.
I'm not asking about you. I'm asking, do you think people would take him there?
No, not round 2.
And you're still a no on James Cook?
Correct.
Okay. Derrick Henry.
Non-PPR, yes.
Half PPR, full PPR?
Maybe in half PPR.
Kamara.
Nope. Not in round 2.
Achane, you got to say yes on Achane because his ADP.
I do have to say yes on
Achane. Ken Walker.
No.
Okay. All right. So let's get to it. Give me a running back in this range, 9 through 17 in the consensus rankings, Jamie, that you find yourself drafting a lot.
James Cook.
And you're cool with him in round 2?
Very much so.
Oh, all right. Let's get in. Yeah. Go ahead.
I mean, we talked about this previously. I did this for our bold predictions for the magazine. So I think he's going to have a chance to lead running backs in receptions this year. I'll Azer stat it for you. So if you take out the game where he didn't get a target, now it's not because of injury or anything else. I'm just doing it for fun. But if you take out the game where he didn't get a target, which is a little weird in the Week 16 matchup against the Chargers, in the 9 games with Joe Brady, he was on pace for 60 catches. Now they just lost over 200 targets and over 120. What was it? Receptions? 152 receptions and 241 targets with Gabe Davis and Stephon Diggs. I'll say that the right way with Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis gone. That you're looking at this receiving core and there's a lot to prove. And so I think what Joe Brady will do is just give James Cook an opportunity to catch more passes. And so will he get to 76 or 77 like Breece Hall and Alvin Kamara were a year ago? Probably not, but just having some fun with it. But in any event, in the 9 games, he was on pace for 52 catches. I'm sorry, in the 9 games, he was on pace for 52 catches. Take out that game, he was on pace for 60 catches. And I think that's going to be a huge asset for him on top of the fact that I think he'll score more than 6 total touchdowns, certainly more than 2 rushing touchdowns. So I like the setup for James Cook quite a bit.
Dave, why are you a no on Cook in round 2?
I'm just going to go on the track record of Buffalo Bills running backs since Josh Allen has come to power at quarterback for them. And just every year we get enamored with a Bills running back. And it was kind of easier to be okay with a Bills running back before this year because the draft capital wasn't very high. James Cook last year, where were we taking him? 4 or 5, somewhere in that range? I felt like that wasn't too high to take the chance on James Cook, knowing that things could go wrong. And for the first half of the year, things definitely weren't great for James Cook. In the second half of the year, he did well. The offensive coordinator changed man. He got a ton more work, but then he tailed off at the end of the year. And it just makes me nervous to be that all in on a Bills running back, even one as talented as James Cook. I don't care about them drafting Ray Davis. I know someone else is going to be there, whether it's Davis or Ty Johnson, to take away some work. That shouldn't stop you. What stops me is that Josh Allen dominates in the red zone. He gets tons of touchdowns on the ground there, and he's going to continue to throw the ball to everybody. It's not going to be just James Cook. The types of targets that are missing from that offense, Gabe Davis is an example. That's deep shots. Those are downfield. I don't think James Cook is going to get a lot of those. Stephon Diggs was working the intermediate area, the short area. He worked everywhere. How many of those targets is James Cook going to get? I get where you're coming from, and I think he's going to be good. I just don't think he's going to be round 2 good. It's too close to his ceiling for me.
Okay, so how about who's a player, Dave, that you draft a lot?
It's Jacobs, and it's because of where he's ended up, and I really like where he's ended up and the potential that he has and what we've seen from him, not last year, because I think we can all agree that last year was kind of a mess for him. But I think moving forward, he's got a chance to be the not just the lead back in Green Bay. I think that's kind of obvious, but I think he's going to get a lot of work. He got over 20 touches a game last year when he was healthy in Las Vegas. This is one of my favorite stats. I shared this with you, Adam. I want to share it with everybody, including Jamie.
Okay.
LaFleur's coached for 5 years in Green Bay, 83 regular season games. 67 of those 83 regular season games, at least one running back, at least one, has had at least 15 touches in a game. Last year, when Jacobs had 15 touches, it happened in 11 games. He averaged 15.1 PPR points. 15.1 is okay. The year before was the breakout year, the contract year for Jacobs. 15 games with 15-plus touches, 20.8 PPR points per game. This is a better offense that he's in compared to what he was in Las Vegas. I think the opportunities are not going to shrink for him. The track record is what it is with LaFleur. I think the offensive line is an upgrade for him as well, and he's not going to be holding out going into training camp. He won't miss a chunk of training camp. Hopefully, fingers crossed, he stays healthy in the early going. The 26-year-old Jacobs can go back to being 15-plus PPR points with higher upside than almost any running back that we will talk about on today's show.
I just don't see it in the passing game. That's the problem. I think they're going to use Lloyd. I think they're going to use Dillon too much. It just feels like
a passing game?
No. They're going to use Lloyd in the passing game. They're going to use Dillon. I still think too much.
They're going to use Lloyd in the passing game.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I think they will.
Well, Josh Jacobs in his career, I think he has 9 catches on third down. So again, this is another guy that stays on the field so much, like Mixon, where it doesn't have to be a third down back. It's just a matter of, is Jordan Love going to throw to him on first and second down? So how many catches are we thinking? That's where you guys disagree. How many catches are we thinking for Jacobs?
Well, last year, what did he average? I'm looking at it right now. Going to
37 and 13
2.3 catches per game. It's actually one of the lowest catch per game averages, and only 3 targets per game.
That's not true.
I said one of the lowest of the guys that we're going to talk about today.
No. I think he averaged more catches than that, unless I have the wrong stats for him.
I'm looking. Oh, no. That's at the end of the year.
3 catches per game.
I had a filter on for James Cook. That's my bad. What do you see?
3 catches per game.
I would take that in a heartbeat. That's 50 catches if he stays healthy. Let's put it at 48. So that way he's just shy of it. That sets a realistic expectation. And just the reason why I was surprised by what you said about Marshawn Lloyd at USC, 34 catches in 3 seasons, Jamie. That's not something that's been an established part of his game.
I expect him to be more involved in the passing game because I don't think that Jacobs is going to be the primary pass catcher.
That's interesting.
I'd say 35 catches is realistic for him.
Man, it's really fun that you guys disagree so much on those 2 players, If you're on the clock.
Listen, I'm drafting Josh Jacobs. I'm not taking him in round 2, and I'd rather have James Cook.
You'd rather have James Cook. I'd rather have Jacobs.
I'll take Jacobs
in round 3.
in non-PPR.
Jacobs in round 3?
No. Late round 3.
And that's how I feel about Cook. We're going to differ by about a round on those two guys. You'll take Cook, and I get it with the catches. Yes, James Cook will have more catches than Josh Jacobs. I think if Jacobs stays healthy, he'll have more touches, more total yards, more touchdowns.
Jacobs has been a top 15 running back per game in full PPR in 4 of 5 seasons. He's been top 17 in all 5 seasons. 17 was his lowest finish in full PPR. That was last year. That's per game. Last year was terrible for Jacobs. He held out. He got off to a really bad start. He wasn't that much better after. He just got a lot more work. But, he's an interesting per carry guy. He's had 3 years where he's been really bad per carry, not good per carry. 2 years where he's been fantastic. But he's never had competition. He's just never, ever had competition. He's been on pace for like over 300 carries, I think, in 4 of 5 seasons. We've never seen that from a Packers running back. Will they use him differently than Aaron Jones? We will find out. And I guess we'll get further into those guys in a little bit. I got to take a break. I'm going to ask you who you're avoiding in this range. Got a couple of news items. Got a funny comment from Apple Podcasts, and we'll be right back on Fantasy Football Today.
Ladies, be shaking.
Okay, so welcome back to the show, everybody. So who's a running back in this range? And again, I'll give the names. They are James Cook. Oh, I'll give them in order in the consensus rankings. I have about 1,000 tabs open now, so give me 1 second here. Rachaad White, James Cook, Isiah Pacheco, Josh Jacobs, Joe Mixon, Derrick Henry, Alvin Kamara, and Devon Achane. Dave, who's a player that you typically avoid in this range? I guess it's James Cook.
No, I've got 2 running backs that are ranked even lower than Cook. And so I would prefer Cook over Mixon and Ken Walker.
Okay, Mixon and Ken Walker. How about you, Jamie?
Who I avoid? Probably Achane, especially as cost.
Okay. All right, we'll get into all these guys. My heart is beating like a drum right now. The angst, the nervousness. I just made a dynasty trade. I just moved up from 7 to 4 in our big draft, and I am on the clock.
You took the
deal.
Okay, I gave up to Heath. Heath had the 4th pick. He has a terrible quarterback situation in our Superflex League. He has, what did I say? Justin Fields, Ryan Tannehill, and Aiden O'Connell. So he really wanted Minshew. So I had the 7th pick. He had the 4th pick. I gave him Trey McBride. Oh, let me just make sure I have the terms right here. Okay.
I see it.
Trey McBride, my 1st round pick. And what? And Minshew.
Right.
Yeah.
You moved from 7 to 4.
7th and Minshew for the 4th pick and the 23rd pick. And I'm taking Neighbors.
Oh, you got the 23rd pick out of it too.
Yeah.
Hey.
Not bad, right?
I like it.
Oh,
and now
man.
you're going to get your guy.
Yeah, I just really wanted Malik Neighbors. I'm so excited about that. Okay. News and notes. Ramondre Stevenson is slimmer. He has slimmed down. They're hoping for more explosive plays from him. They really seem to like Ramondre Stevenson. He appears to be closing in on a contract extension. He's not part of today's show, but we will talk about him at some point soon. And Mike Tomlin signed a 3-year contract extension through 2027. Okay, let's get back to this discussion here. Running back rankings, consensus 9 through 17. So James Cook, I don't know if there's anything more we need to say about here. Pros and cons, I think it's pretty straightforward, right? He's definitely the guy. He's the main guy. The question is he going to be the goal line guy? They used Latavius Murray there last year. Are they really going to use Ray Davis there? Because I will say this, guys, about James Cook. The cons are obvious. It's that what Dave said. Josh Allen always steals all the touchdowns. But if they just give him Latavius Murray's role, then he could have a 10 total touchdown type of season, I'm not saying he'll have 10 rushing touchdowns, but he just needs to be, getting most of the goal line running back work. Even if Josh Allen has that role, Dave, then I still think there's enough to go around unless they give it to other guys. But if they just say, all right, it's going to be Josh Allen and James Cook getting like 90% of the goal line running back of the goal line rushes. I think he'll be fine then. What do you think about that?
Well, you had the stat on a show recently, I guess it was 2 weeks ago, where the Bills have had like 26 goal to go carries or carries.
Oh, 27 touchdowns over the last 6 years from the inside, I think the 5-yard line from running backs.
What's going is James Cook the type of running back to make them change their philosophy there?
But they actually had the 8th most running back carries from like the 5-yard line or closer last year. Believe it or not.
Cook have.
Oh, very few. I don't know, 4 or something. It was
so
mostly.
Like you're hoping for something to happen that this coaching staff with 2 different offensive coordinators have viewed, the same way. They look at James Cook and they say, awesome running back, great game breaker, awesome pass catcher out of the backfield, and maybe not somebody that we want to get beat up near the goal line. And that's where somebody like Ray Davis, who has a body similar to Latavius Murray, physical dude. I've stood next to Ray Davis. He was at the Senior Bowl. That's a guy who could get it done. They've got a quarterback who's an absolute hoss, and Josh Allen, he's gotten it done. So
I know that.
It's one area that really makes me nervous about Cook on a team that's had such inconsistent production from running backs over those 6 years that you're talking about. And that just, it makes me a little bit nervous to trust Cook beyond the catches, because the catches will be there. 50 plus, no problem. 60 plus, yeah. But I worry about the rest of Cook's game to carry him as a 2nd-round pick in fantasy.
Well, I mean, we spent the entire show yesterday talking about regression, and Josh Allen was a big part of that, and coming down from his 15 touchdowns to where he usually is, which is around 8. And so does that go to a rookie running back, or does that go a couple, if not maybe closer to 5 to James Cook? And if he gets that, he's well worth a round 2 pick.
5 rushing touchdowns. And then what did he have last year receiving?
He had 4 receiving touchdowns, and that's probably unrealistic. But if he's 8 plus touchdowns plus the reception total that he's going to get, he's going to be well worth a round 2 pick.
What kind of total yardage are we looking? What was he on pace for from week 11 on? That's probably
last year was 1,500 total yards.
That's
well. Let me give you this. Let me compare Pacheco and Cook and their best stretches. So this is like the Joe Brady. I'll just give you Cook for now. All right. Cook with Joe Brady, that's 9 games, including the postseason. He was on pace for 342 touches, 53 catches, just short of 1,700 total yards and 8 touchdowns. I wish I had calculated how many fantasy points per game that was, but that's really good.
That's great.
Here's the difference between Cook and Pacheco, by the way. They might be similar in yards per carry, and I can't project what their yards per catch is going to be. There's not enough of a sample size, but it looks like Cook is going to be a lot better than Pacheco in yards per catch. He certainly was last year. Pacheco was not very good at that. I don't know that Pacheco is really a playmaker in the passing game as a receiver. I think Cook might be. So you might get more catches from Cook, but you also might get a lot more receiving yards. But yeah, I mean, that's a 1,700 total yard pace. So let's knock it down to like 1,550. 1,550 total yards, maybe. Maybe he doesn't get quite as much work as he did, but 10 touchdowns for Cook. Yeah.
I mean, again, it's the role in the passing game that you're looking at. They have to replace so much, and you're asking Curtis Samuel and Keon Coleman to do that.
Okay, so are we good? Yeah.
Last year, Rachaad White had 64 catches, 1,539 yards, and 9 touchdowns. Is that the type of stat line that you're looking at for James Cook?
If he gets to those touchdowns, I think the yardage will be better and the receptions will be better.
All right. Well, even if he doesn't get that extra yardage and the receptions aren't better, that's still 10th best among running backs. That's not bad. Yeah. So now if you're drafting him as the 10th running back off the board, is it close to his ceiling? I would say no. I would say yes, it's close, but it's not at the ceiling. But that's if you think he's going to get that much.
And keep it. I think it's a pretty good projection. What Rachaad White did last year was RB10 per game with 64 catches. Okay, and what was I going to say? Oh yeah, keep in mind. I think I've kept bringing this up. I feel like people sort of agree with me. It's kind of tough toward the end of round 2. It doesn't really feel like a lot of players are conventional, confident round 2 picks. So, like Josh Jacobs going in round 2, I think a lot of people would say, no, it's too risky. Dave obviously is okay with that. And by the way, I've given you consensus rankings here, but Jamie's got Cook 9th and Dave has Cook 15th. So consensus, Cook is actually 10th. Rachaad White is 9th. I have him 3rd on this list for whatever reason. So I went Cook, Pacheco, White, sort of group them together. Let's talk about Isiah Pacheco. Let's move to him. Pros and cons for Isiah Pacheco. Jamie, give me some quick pros and cons for Pacheco.
I mean, the offense he plays on seemingly got better, assuming Rashee Rice isn't suspended for, the majority of the season. But if he's there for a good portion of it, which is what we expect, now you have a better passing game, which would open up things for the, run game. He did show that he can be involved in the passing game last year and be a significant contributor there. But I mean, you're asking a Andy Reid running back, which for the most part has been an unbelievable situation in Philadelphia and Kansas City when that guy has been given the touches that Pacheco got last year, to be a star. And that's what he was last year. So very limited competition for touches. Role in the passing game, I think, will continue to grow. And that's the upside. The downside is that the passing game gets better and they get, continue to still be more creative at the goal line, and he loses a couple scores, and that he's not as involved in the passing game.
Dave, pros and cons for Isiah Pacheco, who was RB 15, 14 per game, and overall, really, if you look at depending on different formats.
There were 7 games last year where he played at least 60% of the snaps. He had at least 20 touches in 6 of those 7 games. He averaged 19.1 PPR points, 16.7 non-PPR points, with 5 touchdowns, 3 games with over 100 yards in those 7. What's stopping the Chiefs from using him to the tune of 60% of the snaps right out of the gate this year? Their running back depth chart is not pretty. They've got Clyde Edwards-Helaire as the direct backup. He's on a 1-year deal. I don't think Luis Rees-Zammit is going to end up being someone that takes a lot of work away on running downs or in the passing game from Isiah Pacheco. That's their rugby player, for those that may not be aware. He's actually he looks like he could be a difference maker in the kick return game in a major way, but I don't know if he's going to end up playing a lot of offense. I think Pacheco's good. 25 years old, been in this offense for a couple of years. There doesn't seem to be a threat for that passing downs work, for that third down role. And so I agree with Jamie's sentiment that there could be more for him in the passing game. I'm probably making a big mistake by having Pacheco behind Josh Jacobs. That's one that I think I can fix. And I think Pacheco is absolutely worth a 2nd-round pick when you get to that point that you talked about, Adam, when you don't really love anybody that's left on the board, but Pacheco's there, and you can say, all right, Chiefs are running back. They've got 2 fast guys on the field now, so the safeties will play back quite a bit, and Pacheco could end up being a very good player both in the run game and the pass game. Could end up having his best year yet.
I know I'm going to keep coming back to this, and at some point we should probably spend more time on it. That spot, that area that you're talking about, let's say it's 18 to 24, 20 to 24. I don't know which range you want to talk about at the end of round 2.
So for me, I think it's nine running backs, 9 wide receivers, and then we'll see how many quarterbacks and tight ends are taken.
Again, this is where ADP versus analyst expert drafts, depending on how you want to break it down. Why it's, in my opinion, so important to take those receivers after you take McCaffrey, because the picks that you're looking at, which is these guys, comparatively to Ayuk and Waddle and Pittman and those guys that have, I think, more question marks than some of these players. And so if you want to go hero RB, these are the guys that you're looking at, especially if you start with Lamb or Tyreek or Jefferson or any of these guys, picks 2 through 6 or 7. It's just, to me, the smarter way to draft.
Smarter way to draft is to go McCaffrey and then one of the top receivers.
Yeah, taking McCaffrey is almost like a curse, because what you're looking at 24 and 25 feels a little gross, because you have to overpay for some guys.
I think the counter to that is who cares? Just take the best players. You don't have to get a running back there. If you,
I don't think you have to get a running back at all. But again, it's, do you want to take one of the quarterbacks? Do you want to reach for Laporta or Kelsey? And I say reach just because I think they're going to slip a little bit. Or do you, take a receiver that you don't necessarily love? Now, the hope is the quarterbacks go.
The hope, right? That would help.
How many
all right,
mock drafts have we done, Adam, where a quarterback has gone in round 2 with the fans?
I think Josh Allen. I think they've been going the OnlyFans mock drafts have been taking quarterbacks earlier than the CBS drafts. Okay, let me say something on Pacheco here. He averaged in 10 regular season games with Jerick McKinnon 2.9 targets per game. In 4 regular season games without McKinnon, Pacheco averaged 5 targets per game. Huge jump. Okay, then McKinnon missed most of the playoffs. He played in the Super Bowl and didn't really get that much work. They don't have McKinnon right now. You talk about that third down role. I mean, I think that is the key for Isiah Pacheco because he had a good year last year, but he didn't finish in the top 12. He was 14th in full PPR per game. He was 15th in half PPR. They haven't had, you talk about the history of Bills running backs. The Chiefs haven't had a true stud fantasy running back since Kareem Hunt.
Right. It's true.
They get really tricky around the goal line and don't always, last 6 seasons with Mahomes, they've never had more than 13 total running back rushing touchdowns. Not for a single running back, but running back rushing touchdowns. They've never had more than 13 in the Mahomes era. 3 of the last 4 years, they've had 8 to 10. So this hasn't been a great spot for touchdowns for Chiefs running backs. But it did feel like second half of the year, Pacheco took on a role that no running back has really had since Kareem Hunt. Does that continue? It's kind of like James Cook, man. These guys both had huge second halves. Does that continue for Pacheco? And I have major questions about the passing game because he played, I think, 5 snaps on third down when Jerick McKinnon was healthy. I think they might want a third down running back, and I don't know that they want it to be Pacheco. So I have some doubts about that. And I actually think that he's got some, not bust potential. He feels kind of safe. Like he's not going to be terrible. You can't start him. But remember, he took over. I'm sorry. I did about 90 minutes of research on Pacheco, so I have a lot I'm spewing out from this morning. Pacheco took over in week 10 of his rookie season, 2022. He had a stretch from mid-season 22 to mid-season 2023 of, I think, 21 games. And he scored more than 16.2 PPR fantasy points in one game in 21. And then he went nuts after that. So if he doesn't have that passing role, I think you could be looking at like a 14 point per game kind of guy, which is fine, but certainly not a round 2 pick.
Just to go over their depth chart, here's who they have. And you tell me, Jamie, you can tell me if they could be the passing downs guy. The first one is the one that might have the best shot, Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Yeah. He did play more on third down than Pacheco when McKinnon was out, but it was more even. It wasn't like all Clyde. They were both there, but Clyde than Pacheco.
That's what I would expect this year if they don't bring back McKinnon, if they don't add another passing downs back. Everybody else, Deneric Prince, I don't know if he's played a snap in the NFL. Keontae Ingram isn't a passing downs running back. Reese Zammit is a rugby player. Undrafted rookies, Amani Bailey, Carson Steele. I'd be shocked if they ended up in that big of a role right away in Kansas City's offense where they've got to protect Patrick Mahomes. I think this is setting up very nicely for Isiah Pacheco to be in line for his best year ever. 2nd round pick ahead of Jacobs. There it is.
Okay. Do you take, Olave, Waddle, London, Adams ahead of Pacheco?
For me, it's Pacheco ahead of Adams.
I've got Pacheco ahead of them all because I've got fewer questions about him for now compared to those wide receivers.
I'm going to Rachaad White here. Rachaad White is next up on the list. We've got, James Cook and Isiah Pacheco. I know it's a lot of stats there. I hope I tried my best to clear it up. I hope that was helpful. Anyway, Rachaad White, he was RB 15 per game in non-PPR, 13 per game in half, 10th per game in full PPR. Overall, he was number 4 in full PPR, but 10th per game. And remember, he had a really bad start. He had a tough schedule, scored 13 or more PPR fantasy points in 12 of his last 14 games, including the postseason, and 15.9 or more in 10 of those 14 games. So terrific finish for Rachaad White.
It was Dan. Once Dan fixed him.
That's right. No, it took a little bit longer than that, but Dan certainly inspired him. Dan, Dave, pros and cons for Rachaad White.
The pros are that he's basically an every down back for Tampa, and the Bucs seemingly have painted themselves into a corner with him because the only addition that they made at running back is with Bucky Irving in the draft. And Bucky Irving is a fast running back and can do things. I think he can do things in the passing game. I got to double check it, but his body profiles as such. Yeah. So I wonder if he's going to take some work off of Rachaad White's plate. But I just think that I think the Bucs have no choice but to go with him again. He was very effective, averaged 4.4 targets per game in his last 12 games, averaged 17.9 PPR points per game in those games. So he's got potential to blow away 15 PPR points. This is another guy that I probably should have ranked ahead of Josh Jacobs based on that.
Stop talking yourself out of your Jacobs conviction.
No, I'm still going to take Jacobs in round 2. I just found 2 other running backs that I like a little bit more because of the upside that they provide. And listen, like part of the reason why I really like Jacobs was because he had a year where he had a bunch of games with 15 plus touches and he averaged 20 PPR points per game. I am telling you that I think that's going to be hard for him to do. I think he's going to be right in that range of like 16. Here are 2 running backs that we're talking about who have displayed that when given the opportunity to be a feature back for their teams can get you over 17. Pacheco got you freaking 19.
19.
So I'm more excited about those running backs than Jacobs, just by a little.
The problem for White is the thing that makes him great in fantasy is his receiving. And does Bucky Irving take that away from him? Because they want to use him more strictly as a running back in the traditional role than they have been. And if that's the case, then he's going to struggle because you've noted this time and time again, Adam, whether it's schedule, whether it's offensive line problems, he just hasn't shown or proven to be an elite level runner. Now, can he do that this year? Sure. There's a potential that he gets more experience and understands that, and that's his role. But if he's going to dip below 50 receptions, which has been the case for 2 years, I'm going to be a little concerned. And that's the Bucky Irving edition. So, we've talked about this since the NFL draft, and we all kind of get enamored too much with these 3rd round rookies and 4th round rookies, and they have opportunities and they're an injury away and blah blah blah, and that's certainly the case. But I think what we've heard from this coaching staff without Dave Canales is how much they like Rachaad White. And that's what I keep coming back to, is that I think they're still going to make him that guy and keep him in the passing game and allow him to be Baker Mayfield's guy. Because that's one thing about Baker Mayfield that's been underrated. He did it in Carolina. He did it in Cleveland. He certainly did it in Tampa Bay. He throws to his running backs, and he's a very good asset to his running backs in that case. Now, granted, he had Christian McCaffrey in the stretch with Carolina. And he's had Rachaad White, who's been very good at doing this. But if Bucky Irving comes in and takes that role from him in whatever capacity, it's going to be tough to justify taking him in round 2.
So, and let's just put a bow on the Bucky Irving talk. And we saw the Bucs last year. They tried to get Chase Edmonds involved. They tried to get Sean Tucker involved. Neither of those guys could really step up and do what the coaching staff wanted them to do. Irving at Oregon last year, 56 catches. The year before, 31 catches. So that's 87 catches his last 2 seasons, averaged over 8 yards per catch with 5 touchdowns in those 2 seasons. That's on top of him being a 1,000-yard rusher. Each of those past 2 seasons, he scored 11 touchdowns for Oregon last year. He's a lean back. He's 190. He's short, but he can catch. And so this is someone who I think is a little bit more of a legitimate threat to take away work in the passing game than someone like Marshawn Lloyd, who hasn't really done that in college and would have to take a gigantic step in order to do that in Green Bay. To that being said, I still think that there will be downs and distances where the Bucs are going to count on Rachaad White to catch the ball out of the backfield more so than Bucky Irving. Irving has to earn it. Just the fact that he did it in college is nice. That tells you that his learning curve won't be quite as high. But I still think Rachaad White's going to get a lot of work.
Well, I'm less concerned about Rachaad White losing his role in the passing game than I am in the running game, because Rachaad White is great in the passing game. Even if Bucky Irving does have 87 catches in his last 2 years, remember, that was an offense with a super low ADOT. I think they threw the ball a lot, and Bo Nix set a record for completion percentage because he just threw short all the time. But Rachaad White doesn't drop the ball. He catches like almost every target he gets. He's really good there. He can make plays in the passing game. simply put, you have a hard time convincing me that he hasn't been one of the most inefficient, maybe worst running backs in football since entering the league. 3.6 and 3.7 yards per carry. Even for someone who highlights yards per carry a lot, I mean, that is really, really bad. He makes almost no big plays in the running game. So at some point, if he doesn't get it going, remember, they did draft a center in round 1, Graham Barton, so that could help. They've had a bad offensive line. May not be his fault. I don't pretend that yards per carry is all on the running back, but he's one of the worst. Like, he's like bottom 7 or something in yards per carry over the last 2 seasons for 72 running backs who have 100 or more carries. So, that's the concern with Rachaad White.
If he had the line 2 years ago, 3 years ago at this point, Brady's second year there.
Yeah.
When
center.
Yeah, I mean, when they were healthy. And then last year they were injured and banged up. And so that's why they made fixing their offensive line a priority this offseason. So if he can if you're right, Adam, that he stays as the primary pass catcher to this level, and I don't know if he has to be north of 60 catches, but for me, it's north of 50. But if he stays north of 50 and could be a 4 yards per carry kind of guy while still getting this workload, he's going to be an absolute stud.
Yeah, but 4 yards per carry is like he hasn't even been close. He had 272 carries last year. 3 of them were longer than 16 yards. That is so bad. So, that's just, remember, there are guys that lose their job that we don't expect because they're just not effective enough. And I do think we have to put Rachaad White in that boat. It's possible. It's possible he just does not run well enough and he loses work. Like Damian Pierce. We didn't expect it. We never thought Devin Singletary
was a coaching team.
Miles Sanders too. Yes, I know, I get it, but they were so bad that they had to be removed from that role. And I fear that.
I don't think from what the coaches have said, they don't feel that way about White at all. And the offseason doesn't suggest that.
Right. Bowles has been absolutely.
The coaches said everything right about Miles Sanders. As a matter of fact, Rachaad White's production.
That was again, switching teams, and they fired the coach.
Yeah, but what is Todd Bowles going to say about Rachaad White? Like, obviously he's going to praise him.
But the personnel says the same thing, though.
Agreed. Their actions this offseason says it. They didn't get in on any free agent signing, and they drafted a guy in round 4 with a pass catching profile.
And the Panthers spent big money on Miles Sanders and had Chuba Hubbard as their backup. But at the end of the day, Sanders was so bad, they had no choice but to make that switch. And I feel the same way about the Texans. Damian Pierce played his way out of that job. We're talking pros and cons here.
But they also added a veteran to come in and be ready to go because they knew that Pierce would have a hard time.
On a 1-year deal. No, they were giving Pierce every opportunity there. And I'm just saying, I think if you're going to take Rachaad White with a top 30 pick or something like that, you have to be aware that.
Yeah, but
at least in my opinion, he's been terrible.
I don't like the Damian Pierce comparison at all because they switched schemes, they changed coaching staffs. I mean, everything was just he wasn't a fit for what Bobby Sloak wanted to do.
But Damian Pierce at least was good. Like, I'm just saying, Rachaad White has not been a good rusher.
I'm going to tell you what Todd Bowles said, which I think is the more relevant thing here. He didn't say he's a great runner. He said he's a great weapon for us, and that's I think what factors in.
That's why I said I'm more concerned about him losing carries than catches.
But I don't think Bucky Irving is the guy to take him out of that role. I think if Irving's going to take him out of a role, it's going to take him out of a role as a pass catcher.
Yeah, right. I mean, that thought will change if Bucky Irving is like the talk of training camp in Tampa.
Sure.
Say that 10 times fast.
I think people are saying that I'm losing this battle.
It's not a battle to win or lose. You're giving your opinion.
No, I just don't think it's a good example to go Damian Pierce.
I do think you could go anywhere. Look, it's not that the situations are the same. It's that it's the overall thing. Ineffective running backs could lose their job. You have to be aware of that. I don't have that fear at all with James Cook or Isiah Pacheco. Those guys are really good running backs.
I don't have that concern with Rachaad White, though.
Okay, but I just think that when you're talking about those 3 guys who are back-to-back in the consensus rankings, we're talking about Devon Achane who gets drafted here. The only one that I'm worried about being under 4 yards per carry is Rachaad White. And he hasn't even been close to 4 yards per carry. I mean, 3.6, 3.7 yards per carry is absolutely terrible. So I just think that when you're comparing him to these rushers, Cook and Pacheco, I think their primary appeal, and Achane too, is that they're really, really good. They make guys miss. They make big plays. They're awesome. I cannot say that about Rachaad White, the rusher. The receiver, yeah, he's really good there. But I think it's fair to criticize him for this. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to.
It is, but you also made I think a big point in your argument here. How much of that is on him, and how much of that is on the offensive line? And that's I think what what matters in the minds of the coaching staff. Like they may think his 3.7 could have been 3.2. Because
but the lack of big plays, though, I think is also on him. I mean,
again, it's certainly worth bringing up. That's 100% relevant. But I think to say Dameon Pierce is a comp based on what happened to him last year, and Miles Sanders, switching teams, one team switching coaching staff, switching scheme like that, I think is tough to compare those.
Sure. No, I'm not. The situations are different.
Look, you can even counter and say, okay, Canales is gone. It's a new coordinator, so that might impact Rachaad White in a negative way too.
Yeah, but it's a similar type of stuff.
No, I agree, but I'm just saying, like, if he wants to make that as a point.
It's the point. The broader point is ineffective running backs could lose their jobs, and I am worried about him being ineffective. Maybe people aren't, but I'm just bringing it up. He has not been an effective running back. Okay, I'm sorry. We got to take a break here.
Don't be sorry.
This is going to be a long show.
Food for thought.
Yeah, but it's not my show. I don't want to hog the mic, but
no, it's your show too.
Well, all right. We're going to take a break. We'll get to Josh Jacobs and the other guys after this.
It's a Sunday in Seattle with another round of the Cascadia rivalry on CBS and streaming live on Paramount Plus. Keep your eyes on me.
All right, pros and cons for Josh Jacobs. Do we need to go through this, or did the earlier session suffice on Jacobs?
I think
I'm good with what I said.
Okay. So Dave's higher on him than Jamie is. So let's go to Joe Mixon here. If you want to hear more about Josh Jacobs, just rewind to basically the beginning of the show. Let's go to Joe Mixon. He'll be 28 years old in July. Jamie, what are the pros and cons for Mixon?
I think he's going to a better situation, and that says a lot because the situation in Cincinnati has been very good for him. But this is an offense that has a chance to be amazing. If everything clicks. Clearly, C.J. Stroud's on the rise. The receiving core should be better. Should have an opportunity to score more points. I think he'll still be involved in the passing game. The negative is that Joe Mixon is was kicked to the curb for a reason, not just salary related, and that he might not be the best version of Joe Mixon at this point in his career. So I'm excited about the scenario for him, but I'm cautiously optimistic. I don't want to go too far all in on Mixon. I kind of feel similar to him than I feel about Josh Jacobs, except with Mixon, I don't view Dameon Pierce as competition. I know you do, Adam, just based on something that you sent me in regards to our magazine about what D'Amico Ryan said about a 1-2 punch. I think Mixon's going to dominate touches there, which is the plus for him. Not that I don't think Jacobs will also, but I think Mixon's, for me, a little bit safer.
They acquired him for peanuts, and then they gave him a contract extension, so they better do it. What I like about Mixon is that he's averaged at least 15 PPR points every year since 2020 in Cincinnati, and now he's going to an offense that they've turned it around so much, and the offensive line should be strong. We know that the receiving core is awesome. I'm not convinced that this offense is going to become like one of the pass heaviest in the league. They'll be up there. They have to be. They've got Stroud and they've got these receivers, but Mixon can be a little bit of a part of that on first and second downs, but he's also going to be able to benefit from so many pass catchers out there, kind of like what I talked about with Pacheco. Safeties aren't going to be lurking down near the line of scrimmage very often. And I think Mixon is still good enough to get a good rushing average, not a great one, but a good one, be it 8 in the box or not. And on top of that, plenty of touchdown opportunities, plenty of total yard opportunities. I think he's in a really good spot. You could squeeze one more year of 15 plus PPR out of Joe Mixon.
Yeah, I think Josh Jacobs has one season in his career where he's finished in the top 12 per game. It was 2022 when he was third. I said earlier he's been top 17 per game every year. He's been top 15 per game almost every year, but I think only one top 12 per game in full PPR for Jacobs. Mixon, on the other hand, has been top 12 per game in 5 of the last 6 seasons in both half and full PPR. And he was top 8 per game in 2021 and 2022. So that's the pro with him. He gives you a lot of offense, a lot of consistency, and probably getting an offensive line upgrade.
Yep.
If you look at ESPN's ratings of run block win rate and you look at PFF last year, their run block grades, Houston was not an upgrade over last year's Bengals team, but their right tackle missed 10 games. Their left tackle missed some time. So They have some young talent on that line, so we're thinking probably an offensive line upgrade. Will he be the third down back? That's a con I have listed here. I don't know if he will. Will Houston throw to their running backs? They didn't really do that much at all last year. And he's going to be 28 years old, and he's been kind of a pedestrian running back. But, Jamie, I'm not really worried about Pierce like being a true 1-2 punch, but I'm worried about him getting maybe like 80 to 100 carries or something like that. I don't know. Enough to be annoying, I guess.
I think that number's high if Mixon's healthy.
It could be. He's certainly got to be. Look, if Pierce is as bad as he was last year, he's not getting 80 carries.
He just wasn't a good
per
fit
game
for
is about 85 carries over the season.
he wasn't a good fit for the scheme. And so, will a year in it and another offseason help? Hopefully. I mean, look, I think Pierce has an opportunity to still be productive in this league and be productive on this team, but it was a disaster last year for him. And so, this is kind of the hope for Joe Mixon. And you can debate the effectiveness of him as a running back, but Devin Singletary was a very good fantasy asset on this team. And I think Joe Mixon's a better player, so I'm hoping that what he does in now an offense that improved from what Singletary was doing last year should have, give Mixon another chance to be a top 10, top 12, if you want to knock him down a peg or two from his age for this season, which is why I keep getting more and more excited about him. So I like the setup. I like the scenario. Like Dave said, they paid him. There's, in my opinion, not a lot of competition for touches. No. And so as long as he stays, healthy, I think he's going to have a big year.
Is he safer than Rachaad White? Is Joe Mixon safer than White or Jacobs?
I think if you come out on the side of White still involved in the passing game, I'll take White. If you come out on the side of White not being as involved in the passing game, then I'll take Mixon.
Okay. Let's go to Derrick Henry. Dave, why don't you give pros and cons for Henry?
The guy's a machine, scores touchdowns like crazy. Last year was one of his worst years, yet it was fairly easy to predict from game to game. He was game script dependent, and he averaged 14.8 PPR points per game. But if we do a little bit of Azer statting, we go over just the 13 games, 13 out of 17, where he had at least 14 touches. And remember, he doesn't catch the ball much. 14 or more touches, 17.9 PPR points per game, 13 touchdowns, 7 games with 100 total yards, another 2 between 95 and 99 total yards. That was on a Tennessee offense that was awful. The offensive line was brutal. The quarterback play was gross pretty much every single game. Now he's going to Baltimore. Always a competitive offensive line there. A quarterback in Lamar Jackson that defenses have to reckon with every single week. And now he's the running back in that backfield without a lot of competition because Keaton Mitchell is still coming back from his ACL. We don't know when he's going to be ready. They've moved on from Dobbins. They've moved on from Gus Edwards. They drafted Rasheen Ali. I don't know how big of a role he'll have. And I'm not saying that Derrick Henry is going to get every role, but every carry, but he's going to get all the important ones. And this is a team that loves to score from short yardage. Henry's going to be their answer there. He's going to be their answer when they're killing the clock. I think he's absolutely going to be in line to have a bounce back year, certainly better than 14.8 PPR points per game. Probably worth penciling in that 16 range, even in full PPR, which means that he's basically 15.5 in non-PPR.
Anything did you do cons there or just pros?
He's 29 years old.
30.
And he doesn't catch a ton of passes.
He's 30.
There you go. And that is it, right? I mean, is it that simple? He's 30 and doesn't catch passes.
It really is, and we spent a lot of time on this last year, wins versus losses. Well, the Ravens win a lot of games, and so he should get an opportunity to have game script in his favor. Dave mentioned, the offense, really the offensive line.
He's 30.
By comparison, night and day, and so to what he's going to and the team he's going to, I mean, imagine if Greg Roman was still the offensive coordinator in Baltimore. My God. But, Henry's going to, dominate carries. And really, if he avoids injury, I don't think 2,000 yards is on the table because of Lamar Jackson, who just gets 800 yards rolling out of bed every time he's been healthy. Derrick Henry is going to be 1,500 plus rushing yards. And Gus Edwards scored 13 rushing touchdowns in this offense. Derrick Henry could get 18 to 20, so to me, he's an easy round 2 pick.
I guess the one running back in this backfield that could take him off the field is Justice Hill, who for whatever reason, this coaching staff really liked him last year. He can play all 3 downs, but I'd be shocked if he had 5 touches a game. I think Derrick Henry's going to get a lot of work here. A lot of work. Maybe in blowouts, he won't get quite as many. When it's 56-19, you won't see Derrick Henry on the field. But when it's 31-19, he'll be there. He'll be the reason why they have 31.
So this is the last guy we're going to talk about today. And we have a best ball show tomorrow, but that won't take the full time. So we'll probably finish up on this topic tomorrow. Tomorrow we'll do Kamara, Achane, and Ken Walker. But to say that Henry is an easy second round pick, it's interesting to me because I know you like to fade the older guys, Jamie. So
the situation is just too good.
I know, but if we remove the running backs, right, and if you're on the clock and you've got Jalen Waddle, Chris Olave, Drake London, these third and fourth year guys going into their prime versus a 30-year-old with over 2,000 career carries who's going to have like maybe 70 to 80 fewer catches. That might be a lot than those guys. How do you take Derrick Henry, or would you take Derrick Henry over?
No, I like the receivers better. I guess he's not an easy round to pick. I think I have him like ranked 26, 27. So I shouldn't say he's an easy round to pick, but he's in this mix. I mean, again, it's hard to overlook his lack of role in the passing game, but for him, it's kind of been something that he's done his entire career. And so, give me a number of games for Henry.
17.
16, 17. He's a workhorse. He's a horse.
That's 2,000 total yards and 18 touchdowns.
No way.
I think he can rush for 1,800 yards.
All right, let me just. Isn't it so possible that we're going, hey, what lessons did we learn in 2020 in the 2024 season? Right, this is like January of 25. We're like, never ever draft a 30-year-old running back, with 2,000 carries. So you can't really compare him to Mostert. The thing is, like, you can look at Henry and kind of see a decline. He hasn't been as good the last couple of years.
That's
Still
fair.
good. And he's 30, 2,030 carries.
He's just a freak of nature, though.
and all the greats who've played running back in the NFL have managed to do well after 30.
But have they really?
Almost all of them.
Have they had this many carries?
Yes.
Okay.
Now,
so
listen, there's a decline. I don't expect him to average 5 yards a carry. I don't think that he'll have that same, like Gus Edwards had 5 yards per carry for a bunch of seasons. I don't think he'll have that hyper efficiency just because he's playing with Lamar. Maybe he does. That would surprise me. But I think he's in line to have a very good year, worthy of a round 2-3 turn pick. That's going to be where he goes in full PPR. He's a round 1 pick in non-PPR.
I think he's the easiest one of this group to analyze because you kind of know. The only thing is, like, is he going to fade? Is he going to start fading? Is he going to start playing worse and not really being that good? And also, Baltimore has 3 new offensive linemen. Like, we talk a lot about their offensive line as if it's a given. Well, they've got a pretty new group this year. You trust them to be good. They're just Baltimore, and Jackson's going to create a lot of opportunities. But you don't have to. Oh, how many catches is he going to get? What kind of roles is he going to get? Like, it's not like Cook. It's not like Pacheco.
Does he get to 25?
The McKinnon factor. 25 catches in 17 games, probably right around there, right? But we know what the situation is. It's just the question is father. It's either is it going to be Derrick Henry or Father Time? Who's going to win? Right? This is pretty much that simple.
I mean, Father Time is undefeated, so that's clearly a knock against him. But is this the year?
Right? Is this the year? That's it. That's all it is, right? I mean, he's not.
Now, I've drafted Henry once. It's the league that we're playing out. It's our magazine league, and to me, it was an easy pick. It was round 3, middle of round 3. I started with Justin Jefferson and Chris Olave. So it was
perfect.
Very,
awesome.
Very simple for me to take Derrick Henry. Now, this is a 3-receiver PPR league, and my 2 running backs are Derrick Henry and Najee Harris. So I'm not exactly counting on my running backs to lead the way from a reception total. But I'm only starting 2 running backs. I've got 4 receivers that are going to – I have 5 receivers that I can rotate in for 4 spots. So I'm not worried about what Derrick Henry's reception totals are. But you get him in round 3, you should be fairly safe.
By the way, we can end on this. You're looking for the comp for Rachaad White. Najee Harris has played 17 games every single year. He's gone from 307 to 272 to 255 carries. He has a good running mate. I don't know that exists in Tampa Bay, but that would be more of the comp. It's like,
but again,
wasn't good enough to justify all those carries.
But again, the counter to that would be Rachaad White went from 50 catches to 64.
Yeah.
Year 1 to year 2. That's why you're drafting Rachaad White.
No, I understand. I just
And
was
Najee hasn't been replaced yet.
he hasn't, but Jalen Warren has cut into his work because Harris just isn't as good as Jalen Warren. All right, so we have talked about James Cook, Pacheco, Rachaad White, Josh Jacobs, Joe Mixon, and Derrick Henry. 6 running backs. We'll finish the show. How do you rank them?
The names again?
They are Cook, Pacheco, White, Jacobs, Mixon, Henry.
Okay. I've got Pacheco at the top.
White.
Oh, go ahead, James.
Cook, Pacheco, White, Henry, Mixon, Jacobs.
After all the changes I made today, I've got Pacheco, White, Jacobs, Henry, Cook, Mixon, and I've got a couple of guys between Cook and Mixon.
I don't understand why it is so hard for these two people in this chat to understand the point I am making about Rachaad White. I hope everyone else is clear. Obviously, I'm drafting him ahead of Najee Harris. Duh. Forget it. All right. That's it for us. And Dynasty's coming up right now. Hopefully, Heath will talk about that blockbuster. You know, I'm going to ask Heath if I can come on the show. And talk about our big blockbuster trade.
You don't have to ask Heath. You can just get
Did you make a pick yet?
the link.
Yeah, it's neighbors.
But
Tom,
okay.
send him the link and he'll just like dive bomb the show. And everyone's in on it but Heath.
Okay, see y'all. I love you all, chat. I love you all. Until tomorrow, best ball, and we'll finish this discussion with Kamara, Achane, and Ken Walker. See ya.